Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. It started as a dream trip. Just me and my best friend, Ethan, escaping to a remote cabin in the woods. A week in the middle of nowhere. No phones, no distractions, just the two of us in nature. It sounded perfect. We had been talking about it for months, and when the time finally came, we were both eager to leave behind the chaos of city life. We imagined ourselves sitting by the fire, maybe hiking a little, laughing about old memories, and forgetting about the world for a while. But the moment we arrived, things didn't feel right. The cabin was tucked away in the trees at the edge of a vast forest. Old, beautiful in a way that made you think about stories and ghosts and things that had been left alone too long. It had this timeless feel, like it had always been there, and like it was never meant to be found. The wooden floors creaked beneath our feet as we dragged our bags inside, the air heavy with the smell of pine and earth. The place looked untouched, but you could tell it had been standing for years, maybe longer. The walls seemed to whisper when the wind blew through the cracks. There was something about the silence that felt too thick, too heavy for comfort. We set our things down, unpacked a bit, and then sat on the porch as the sun dipped behind the trees. The kind of sunset that made everything look peaceful, like something out of a painting. We cracked open a couple of beers, chatting about life, reminiscing about high school and old girlfriends. Ethan was talking about his new job, and I was telling him about the latest disaster of my work. The usual stuff. We were relaxing, unwinding, until around midnight. That's when it happened. It wasn't sudden, not really. It just started. At first, we both thought we were imagining it. Flickers of light through the trees, too far away to be sure. Just a strange, distant glow, like the kind you'd see from a campfire or someone's headlights. I remember mentioning that it could be some other campers nearby, maybe people who'd gotten lost and were setting up a fire. Ethan nodded, but there was something in his eyes that made me think he wasn't convinced. I felt it too, the creeping unease. It wasn't normal, whatever it was. The lights flickered again, and again. This time, I saw it more clearly, like someone was turning on and off a lantern out there in the woods. But the flickers were odd, irregular, not like any fire or car lights I'd ever seen. They flashed in strange patterns, almost like they were moving in circles. It was as if the lights had a purpose, like they were trying to communicate something. The air turned cold. I remember the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, my skin prickling with an awareness that I couldn't shake. I looked over at Ethan, his face pale in the dim light, his eyes locked on the same thing I was staring at. We both felt it. Something wasn't right. "Let's go inside," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice was tight, unsure. Ethan didn't reply. He just stood up and grabbed a flashlight off the porch table. "Let's check it out," he said, his voice lower than usual. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay on that porch and pretend nothing was happening. But I knew Ethan wasn't the type to back down from something strange. And honestly, part of me wanted to know what the hell was going on. We grabbed our flashlights, and together, we ventured into the woods, following the flickering glow. The trees closed in around us, the shadows stretching long in the dim light. My footsteps were muffled in the soft ground, but every time I looked up, The lights seemed to get further away, like they were teasing us, pulling us deeper into the forest. We walked for what felt like hours. The lights never seemed to get any closer, but they never completely disappeared either. They flickered, circled, teased us, leading us on like a trail we couldn't help but follow. Every step deeper into the forest made the air thicker, colder, heavier. And then, just as suddenly as they had started, the lights stopped. It was complete silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. No rustling of leaves. No wind. Nothing. It was as though the woods had swallowed every sound in existence. We stood there for a moment, the flashlights cutting through the dark, scanning the trees around us. I felt a tightness in my chest, a cold feeling spreading through me, but I didn't say anything. Neither did Ethan. We were both standing still, waiting for something, I don't know what, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. And then I saw it. Footprints. Deep, wide prints in the mud, just off the trail, leading into the trees. My breath caught in my throat. They weren't human footprints. They were too wide, too deep. The marks were massive, like something much heavier than a person had stepped there. Something that shouldn't be walking around in the woods at all. Ethan, I whisper, my voice shaky. Look at this. He turned, shining his flashlight over the prints. His face went ashen, and he stepped back, his eyes darting around like he was waiting for something to jump out at us. Let's go back, I said, pulling on his sleeve, but it was too late. I caught a movement from the corner of my eye. Shadows, figures, just beyond the reach of our flashlights, moving slowly between the trees. My heart hammered in my chest. They weren't human figures. They didn't move like people. They didn't even seem to have a shape. Just shifting shadows, bending in ways they shouldn't. I grabbed Ethan's arm, and we didn't speak after that. There were no words. We turned and ran, back toward the cabin, our footsteps crunching through the leaves, too fast, too panicked. I kept my flashlight trained ahead, but every time I glanced back, I saw them, moving just out of the light, in the distance, in the shadows. We didn't stop until we were back on the porch. We didn't even bother to lock the door. We just sat there in silence, looking out into the trees, the cabin suddenly feeling smaller, colder, more distant than it ever had before. The lights never came back that night, but even now I sometimes hear the sound of footsteps on the wind, heavy and close, like something is just beyond the trees, waiting for me to turn around. It's not over. I know it isn't. The woods are still out there, still watching, and sometimes when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear the faintest flicker of lights, too far away to see but close enough to feel. And it scares the hell out of me. Story 2. It was supposed to be a peaceful retreat. Just me, the woods, and my thoughts. I'd rented a cabin far off from everything. No phone service, no distractions. I needed time to clear my head, to find some sort of peace. Maybe I was running from something. Maybe I just needed a break. Either way, I didn't expect the place to be anything more than an isolated getaway. The cabin was exactly as the pictures had promised. Old, rustic, sitting alone on the edge of a dense forest. I could smell the wood, the earth, the dampness of the trees surrounding it. It felt like something out of a story, something peaceful, the kind of place where you could sit on the porch, look out over the horizon, and breathe in the fresh air. That's what I wanted. No people, No noise, no pressure, just quiet. But when I stepped out of the car and made my way to the door, I noticed something strange. A folded piece of paper tucked under the doormat. I hesitated before picking it up, thinking it was probably a note from the owner or maybe some kind of instruction. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was simple, written in a shaky hand, the kind you'd expect to see from someone who'd been up too long, or maybe from someone who had seen too much. Don't let it in. It didn't make sense. The note seemed like a joke. Maybe a prank from the owner, or maybe someone who had stayed there before. I shrugged it off, feeling a little ridiculous for even thinking it could be anything more. The inside of the cabin was just as expected, cozy, with a fireplace and worn furniture. The place was old, but not in a decrepit way. It had character, the kind of charm that only comes with age. I tossed my bags onto the bed and made myself comfortable, settling in for the night. As evening rolled in, I noticed something odd. The woods were silent. Not a single rustling leaf. No birds chirping. No distant howls of coyotes. It was as if the forest had held its breath. The kind of quiet that felt heavy, oppressive, like something was watching, waiting. It made my skin prickle with unease. I tried to ignore it. I'd spent plenty of time alone in the woods before. It wasn't anything new, but still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I tried to sleep. The sheets felt too cold against my skin, the pillow too stiff. I tossed and turned, glancing out the window at the moonlight filtering through the trees. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, and the silence outside felt too thick, too consuming. I pulled the blanket over my head, hoping that somehow the darkness would make me forget. But around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of scratching. At first, I thought it was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a squirrel, trying to claw its way inside. It wasn't unusual, especially for a place so isolated. But the scratching didn't stop. It grew more frantic, more urgent, like something desperate to get in. It sent a chill through me, and I lay there frozen for a long moment, listening. The sound didn't stop. It didn't go away. I finally mustered the courage to get up and check it out. My feet hit the cold wooden floor, and I grabbed the flashlight from the bedside table. The light flickered for a second, then steadied as I approached the door. The scratching continued, now accompanied by a low thud, like something or someone was trying to break through. My heart raced. I hesitated. Something told me not to open the door, but curiosity, stupid as it sounds, got the best of me. Slowly, I turned the handle, cracked the door open just enough to peek out. Nothing. The air outside was colder than I expected, and the trees were more oppressive in the dark. There was no movement, no sign of any animal. The woods beyond the cabin were still. I let out a breath, but before I could close the door, I felt it. A cold hand, or something like a hand, brushed against my leg. The touch was light, too smooth, like something not quite human. My breath hitched in my throat, and I jerked my head around, expecting to see something standing there. There was nothing. I slammed the door shut, my pulse pounding in my ears. I locked it and backed away, my eyes scanning the dark cabin for any signs of movement. I checked the windows. Everything seemed fine. But that touch, it lingered in my mind like a memory of something I couldn't fully grasp. Then I saw it. I had walked over to the fireplace, looking for the courage to sit down and calm myself. when I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror hanging above it. A face. It was pale, too pale, twisted, like something pulled from the depths of a nightmare. I froze. My own reflection stared back at me. But then, just behind it, the face appeared. Hollow eyes, sharp cheekbones, and lips twisted in a grimace. It wasn't mine. My stomach turned. I couldn't breathe. I turned, heart hammering in my chest, and bolted for the door. I didn't stop to think. I didn't grab my things, didn't take anything. I just ran, throwing open the door and stepping out into the night. The cold air hit me like a slap to the face. The woods around me seemed alive with whispers, distant voices I couldn't quite make out, flickering shadows dancing between the trees. I could feel something moving, watching, just beyond the reach of the dim light from the cabin. I didn't care. I didn't stop to look. I didn't know how I made it to the car. The drive felt like it took hours, but I didn't stop once, not until I was miles away from that place. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. I don't know what I saw, what I felt. All I know is that something was in that cabin. Something that had been waiting for me. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. It was the thing the note warned me about. The thing I let in. I don't know if it followed me, but I'll never go back to that place to find out. And I've never been able to shake the feeling that it's still out there, waiting for the next fool to step into its grasp. I don't let anyone in anymore. Not like that. Story 3. I never believed in ghost stories. Not really. Sure, I had heard the rumors. Whispers among locals about the old cabin deep in the woods. The one everyone swore was cursed. But when my friends and I decided to spend a weekend there, we thought it would be fun. A little spooky, maybe, but nothing we couldn't handle. I mean, we were grown-ups, right? We'd all been camping before. We'd been on countless hiking trips. A cabin in the woods? No big deal. It was the kind of cabin you'd expect from a place like this. Massive, with thick wooden beams that groaned under the weight of age. Walls worn and scarred by years of wind and weather. The floorboards creaked with every step, and the air inside smelled of old pine and dust. There was a large stone fireplace, the kind you imagine cracking and popping with a roaring fire in winter. And the stairs, oh, the stairs. They looked like something out of a horror movie. They were steep and narrow, worn down by time. You could almost feel them groaning with every step you took, like they were protesting your presence in their house. But there was something else about it, something wrong. It wasn't just the atmosphere, or the unsettling silence that seemed to fill the space between the walls. No, it was more than that. It was the feeling that something was there with us, watching us, a presence, like a shadow lurking just out of sight. Every time I turned a corner, I expected to see something there, but there was nothing, just emptiness. We were unpacking our things, getting settled in when it first happened. It wasn't much at first, just a door upstairs that slammed shut with a bang loud enough to rattle the windows. We all froze. None of us had touched it. There was no wind, no reason for it. We stared at each other, unsure what to say. Finally, we shrugged it off, assuming the house was just settling the way old houses do. Maybe it was the wind after all. But then, the lights started flickering. At first, it was just a little twitch, a quick blink of the bulbs, like they were trying to get your attention. And then it was worse. Rooms went completely dark for seconds, sometimes longer, before flickering back on, only to go out again. The lights had a life of their own, and not a very friendly one. It was like the house was playing with us, taunting us. We laughed it off, nervous and jittery, trying to convince ourselves we were just imagining things. But deep down, we all knew something was wrong. The air was too thick, the darkness too deep. We tried to distract ourselves with card games and stories, anything to break the tension. But the feeling of being watched only grew stronger. That night, around midnight, we were sitting around the fire, trying to push away the weirdness of the place. The logs crackled, sending sparks up the chimney, but even that didn't seem to provide comfort. That's when we heard it. Footsteps. At first, we thought it was just the house settling again. But these footsteps, they weren't just creaking boards. They were deliberate, heavy, slow, pacing. I turned to look at Sarah, sitting across from me. She'd heard it too. Her wide eyes told me everything. We all had. We sat frozen, listening. The steps seemed to move up the stairs, one after the other, slow and deliberate, like someone walking through the hallway upstairs. "Who's up there?" I called, my voice trembling despite myself. No answer. I got up, feeling my heart hammering in my chest. I motioned for Sarah to come with me, and we headed upstairs to check it out. The rest of the group stayed behind, too scared to move, too terrified to do anything but sit there, waiting. We reached the top of the stairs, and there it was. Nothing. The hallway was empty. There were no footsteps now, no sound at all. Just the hum of the old house and the faint creak of the floor beneath our feet. We checked every room, opened every door, but there was no one. No explanation. I could feel my hands shaking. "Maybe the wind," I suggested, but my voice lacked conviction. Sarah didn't say anything. She just turned and walked back downstairs. I followed her, but when I got to the bottom, I felt it. A cold hand gripped my chest, like a vice tightening around my heart. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. It was then that I heard it. A whisper. It wasn't loud, just soft, almost like a breath on the back of my neck. It called my name. "Mike." I froze, my blood running cold. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The voice was coming from the far corner of the room, near the window, but when I looked, there was nothing there. No shadow, no figure. Just the empty corner, dark and untouched. "Mike," it whispered again, this time more urgent, more insistent. I could hear my friends talking, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't respond. My mind was consumed by that voice, that terrible, broken whisper. I finally forced myself to look away, to take a deep breath and shake it off. But when I looked at my phone, just to distract myself, just to prove I wasn't going insane, I saw the message. "Leave. It's already here." I dropped my phone. My mind was reeling, my heart racing. That's when the scraping started. It was soft at first, like nails dragging along the floor, but then it grew louder, more frantic. It seemed to come from every direction at once, above, below, behind me. We all gathered together in the living room, too scared to move. Every small noise felt like a threat. We spent the rest of the night in that room, locked away from whatever was roaming the house. The hours dragged on, every sound making us jump. Scraping, whispers, footsteps. They never stopped. Morning finally came, but we didn't feel any safer. The sun came up weakly, casting strange shadows through the grimy windows. When I stood up to leave, I felt a chill run down my spine. I glanced at the window, at the same corner where I had heard that whisper, and I saw it. A face, just for a moment, pale and thin with hollow eyes. A twisted, knowing grin stretched across its face. And then it was gone. We didn't waste any more time. We packed up in silence and left the cabin without looking back. As we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following us, something still watching us from the woods. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never go back to that cabin. Not ever. And as much as I try to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks, I can't forget that face. Or the whisper. Or the message. It's already here.